So, hi everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Ian. I'm a nutrition coach here at CrossFit Good Fortune, and we are thrilled that you're here today to discover three powerful research-backed nutrition tips that can help reduce stress, boost your mood, and even curb your cravings. So, stay tuned to the end so you avoid missing any kind of valuable information. But first, before we get started, I have a couple questions for you. One, how would you describe your current stress levels? This is a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like super relaxed, 10 being you're going to explode from stress. So go ahead, toss it in the chat or come off mute and say if you're comfortable in that. How are we feeling? 1 to 10. Oh, seeing an 8. Yeah, pretty high stress. 6 to 7 is 22. Geez. Oh my gosh. All right. Hopefully I'll give you some tips, or I'm definitely going to give you some tips that will hopefully help on helping bring that stress level down. 22. Crazy. I also am curious. We always like to ask, what are some of the strategies that you've tried in the past, whether they were successful or not, that you may have been trying to improve your mood? Anybody have anything that they did? Maybe exercise is a common one we hear, or some yoga, maybe some mindful meditation. Yoga, yeah, so that's a big one. Awesome. Well, these tips that we daily outside time, that's a fantastic one. Today, we're going to give you some tips that are focused around nutrition. Those aren't the only things, but that's what we're going to focus around for today. And this brings us to our Healthy Steps Nutrition framework because what at CrossFit Good Fortune, we believe that something is found that fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated, which is why we focus on a simple habit-based approach. So it's not just about what you eat or coming into the gym a couple of times. It's about the whole combination of nutrition, stress, sleep, lifestyle, support system, and exercise. So that's why we take this holistic habit-based approach. Let's dive into today's topic. So first, why do our stress levels and mood matter? Well, because being stress-free and happy feels good. Like it's a simple answer, but it's worth saying out loud that being in a good mood is kind of like it also makes this good decisions easier and has a big overall impact on our well-being and daily lives. How many of you have thought to yourself at some point that skipping on a donut or eating well during your day is all a matter of willpower, and you just gotta like be a stronger will in order to kind of make that happen? Anybody had that thought before? Well, if you do, which is fairly common, I would say you're actually doing yourself a little bit of a disservice there because it ends up being a cycle to where your mood affects the food that you eat, and then that food it also affects your mood. So what we're trying to do here is figure out how we can put that cycle onto a good track. Let's take an example client we'll call John. And in his initial consultation, he mentioned feeling super tired and unproductive at work, struggling with feeling hungry after dinner, which led to poor sleep. Diving into his routine, he was doing multiple cups of coffee during the day with added sugar, some unbalanced meals, and consuming a lot of sugary treats in order to get that energy level that to get through the day. Um, he found that after increasing his vegetable intake, he was shocked at how much more energy he had, better mood, less craving, better sleep, and less desire for those sugary treats. So let's talk about why that works. How does what we eat actually change how we feel? Think of your plate as like having a ripple effect on your day. It's not just about the calories, it's about your focus, your energy, and your temperament. So when you're eating food that's high in nutrients like omega-3s and antioxidants, you're sharpening your brain, stabilizing your mood. On the flip side, we've all been on that sugar roller coaster where you get that quick high from a treat, but it's almost always followed by that inevitable crash, feeling a little irritable afterwards. So if you want to avoid that midday slump and keep your energy nice and steady, you want to think about the trifecta of protein, fiber, and fats. And we'll get into that in just a second. But to know how this is all really happening, we need to take a look at kind of the engine room of your body. And one of the strongest drivers for this energy connection is actually in your gut. So this is our first tip that we have for today. It's going to be support your gut to support your mind. We normally think of our brain as being like our sole command center that kind of feeds out and tells our body what to do, but your growing gut and your brain are actually in constant communication. In fact, scientists sometimes call the gut our second brain. Here's a crazy stat for you. How many of you are familiar with serotonin? That's the like feel good neurotransmitter. It helps regulate your mood and stress and feel happiness. Well, 90% of that is actually produced in your gut. So your digestive health is literally shaping your emotional state. When your microbiome is thriving, your gut is thriving, you feel calm and focused. But when it's out of sync, that's when the anxiety and stress start to creep in. But the good news is this is like a two-way street. So we can actually help control some of this by the food that we take in. So what foods do we want to do to help increase that serotonin and the good feelings? Probiotics and prebiotics. To fix the gut, we look at these two. So think of them as like a tag team for your health. You've probably heard of probiotics before. These are the live cultures, the good bacteria that you can find in things like fermented food with kimchi or sauerkraut. We also find them in unsweetened yogurt. So these things are like the good guys. So every time you take these in, you're like adding more good guys to your gut. Then you've got the prebiotics, and these are the fertilizer for those probiotics, the food that they eat. So things like high fiber foods like fruits and vegetables and whole grains, they'll feed that good bacteria so that it can thrive. So by making sure that you're eating these probiotics and prebiotics, you're planting the seeds for a calmer mind and a much steadier energy level throughout your day. So the science behind this actually really backs it up too. We're finding the connection between your gut and your brain is even stronger than you think. Recent studies have come out showing that people with a diverse gut garden, your gut biome, actually have handle stress better and have a more stable emotions. So there's even a lower risk of depression linked to a healthy microbiome. It's a great reminder that a small change like adding a few more plant-based foods can have a massive impact on your health. So let's talk about how we can put this into practice. Take a look at this diagram I have here. I want you to pick out one colorful vegetable or new plant that maybe you haven't had in a while that you can toss into your meals this week. Anything look interesting? Berries, nice. That's figs. Oh yeah, figs are a good one. I haven't had those in a while. Awesome. Yeah. So eggplant. Yeah, adding these colorful vegetables or these fruits will definitely help, and your gut bacteria will thank you for the variety. All right. So now, while we're tending to that gut garden, we also need to think about the bigger picture, which is going to be how we balance our actual plate. This is going to lead us into tip number 2, which is balance your plate, balance your mood. So the way we structure our meal can either give us that steady all-day energy, or it can send us on this frustrating sugar roller coaster with crashes and highs. So we can lean on so when we lean on refined carbs and sugary snacks, we get that quick spike, but also that quick crash that leaves us tired and irritable. So to avoid that, we want to build a stability team. So this is going to be with fiber from veggies and grains for steady fuel, proteins to keep you full, and healthy fats for that long-lasting energy. Think of this combo as like a slow release energy system rather than a series of spikes and crashes. 2 more quick wins before we dive into how that all works. Eating regularly, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that'll help you from getting some of those crashes when you lack energy. And the other big one, which is also sounds basic, but is definitely worth reminding ourselves, is hydration. Sometimes that midday brain fog that we get isn't so much a lack of energy, it's a lack of water. So by keeping that water bottle close and taking sips, that's a good way to keep our hydration up. All right. Speaking of those spikes we were talking about earlier from the sugar, let's look at what actually happens when we reach for that quick sugary spike. So we've all been there. You're busy, your energy's low, you're getting tired. So you swing through the kitchen or the break room, you grab yourself a pastry, maybe some coffee with some cream and sugar. Feels good at the moment. You get back into the groove and get that immediate lift. But we all know what happens after that, right? Like an hour later, that win turns into a crash. So what happens is the sugary food is so easy to digest that it hits your system all at once and you get that spike. But then the energy levels fall off a cliff later, and that's when you find yourself tired and cranky and actually craving more sugar to get that high back. So we call this the sugar roller coaster. There's a lot of up and downs, but at the end of the day, it's not a ride that you want to be on. So when you're on this ride constantly, it's not just about calories, it's about your temperament. If you've ever felt unusually irritable or reaching for a snack just like an hour and a half after eating, you're probably on this roller coaster. So let's talk about how we can get off that roller coaster. And the answer is balance. It's all about keeping your carbs company and your meals balanced. Before we look into just how that works exactly, I want you to think back. When I say a balanced meal, what's something that comes to mind? Go ahead and toss it in the chat there. What's a nice balanced meal that you've had or can think of off the top of your head? Or talk, yeah, or say it out loud. Proteins, carbs, and veggies. Yeah. Yeah. And some good examples of those. Maybe something like, yeah, chicken, kale, Caesar. That's a good one. Something, maybe you get like a whole grain bread with some eggs and some avocado. What we're looking for is those, yeah, adding protein to the whole grains and some good healthy fats. So these proteins and fats that you're adding with that act as like a speed limit for your digestion. So they slow down how those carbs are hitting your system, and the fiber keeps you full. So that combination gives you that slow release of energy you need, and it keeps you from feeling like you need to go back for additional snacks. So let's look at some of the longer term impacts of sugar on your mental health. There's actually been some recent research that's shown that relying heavily on sugar as your main source of energy doesn't just cause those short-term energy crashes. It can actually lead to some chronic mood swings and broader mental health challenges. Basically, if your energy is always going up and down, so your emotions and your mental state. The flip side is actually pretty empowering, though, because we can manage the sugar intake and focus on nutrient-dense foods, proteins, veggies, and those healthy fats. We can actually give our brains the stabilities they need to thrive. So it comes down to this. When you're choosing balance over the quick fix, it's going to be a longer term, but you're not just fueling your body, you're protecting your mind. All right. So quick recap. We've talked about the gut. We've talked about balancing our plate. Now let's talk about tip number 3, which is going to be keeping an eye on the stimulants and alcohol. So let's be real. We've all been here. Life gets stressful. Yeah, you have a tiring morning, so you grab that extra cup of coffee. Maybe you had a super stressful day, so you grab a glass of wine to unwind in the evening. We've all been there. Here's the trade-off. While those feel like good tools for stress in the moment, high amounts can actually have the opposite effect. Too much caffeine or alcohol disrupts your sleep, muddles your body's natural stress response. So let's look at some of the mechanics of why the caffeine and alcohol can be so tricky. Caffeine is a great sidekick in moderation. Too much, though, can actually spike your cortisol. So that's the stress hormone. So instead of getting that focused energy that you were looking for, you can actually end up jittery or anxious after drinking the coffee. And it inevitably comes back to sabotage your sleep if you get too much. So there's also some slightly sad news if you're one of those that adds cream or sugar to your coffee, because there's been some interesting research lately suggesting that adding those to your coffee actually negate even the standard benefits you get from it. So it's a little bit of a good argument there for learning to enjoy your coffee black or maybe with just a little bit of cream and sugar, so you get some of those benefits. Then we've got alcohol. So it feels like a relaxant at first, and it is, but it's actually a disruptor as well. So it messes with your brain chemistry and prevents you from hitting those deep restorative sleep cycles, which can then spike your anxiety the next day. So while it's a short-term fix or feels good in the short term, it's actually going to set you up worse on the following day. But it's not about cutting these things out forever. It's about mindful consumption. So trying to keep the coffee to the morning to protect your sleep, and maybe save alcohol for special occasions. Setting these kind of simple boundaries can help give your brain the long-term resilience it needs to handle whatever the day throws at you. So, throwing a lot at you here. I want to give you a couple of recaps here, a little recap before we get into some frequently asked questions. But main things from this, support your gut. So that's what this was, the probiotics and prebiotics, adding in those whole vegetables or the fermented foods or yogurts. Balance your plate. This one's focused on making sure that we get protein and healthy fats in with our carbs to slow the release of energy and make us stay full longer. And then finally, limit your stimulants and alcohol. So I did want to jump into some frequently asked questions that we get, and we get this one all the time. Do I have to give up coffee and alcohol to completely support my mood and gut? And the answer here is no. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend it unless it was something you're particularly excited about. We found through coaching, nutrition coaching, that actually people do better with not with taking things away, but with adding things into it. So, what I would recommend if this is going to something you're going to approach is not to try and take away coffee or take away alcohol, but add in something else that can be a little bit better for you. So maybe instead of that third cup of coffee, you have some kind of decaffeinated tea. Or maybe if you're going to go for a drink to relax, maybe you stop yourself and get a glass of water first. You may find that you don't want the coffee or the alcohol as much after you've gotten a little bit of water in you or a little bit of something else to drink. So the other question that we get all the time is, what's one simple thing that I can start doing today? And I gave you a whole bunch of information, gave you three different tips, but I'm going to give you even simpler. I'm going to give you two different things that you can pick one of. So one would be focus on balance first. This is something you can do by making sure that you have protein and healthy fats in with your carbs. So that's one thing you can focus on. Another thing you can do is just focus in on the probiotics or prebiotics. So pick one of those two things. So you're going to do the probiotics, prebiotics, maybe add one of those, that vegetable we talked about earlier. That'd be a great way to add your prebiotics or add in some kind of fermented food to your meals this week. Those are great, simple steps, and you'll be surprised at how much they kind of help out and get you started. I would also be remiss if I didn't leave you with some of our core principles with this as well. This talk was very focused on food for your mood, but we want to make sure that you understand the core principles that our program's founded on as well, because that'll give you the kind of the backbone you can put these other tips on top of. The first one is focus on whole foods first. So you want to eat those whole foods, and you'll find that that helps limit the amount of processed carbs and those sugary stuff that you're going to be eating. Next is focus on balance, which should sound familiar because it's the same as tip number two, but we want to be focusing on balancing our plate to have those proteins, good carbs, and those healthy fats. And then finally, core principle number three is limit the amount of processed carbs, added sugar, and alcohol. And I will say personally, from what I've seen, if you focus on one and two, three kind of happens very naturally on its own.
Okay.
So I have a question for you now. Throwing a lot at you here. What's one of the biggest takeaways you got from this? Is it a simple way you're going to get started? Is it some kind of new information? Maybe some new link? Anybody have anything they want to share that they took from this talk? Gut health equals happy. That's a great one. Yeah, probiotics. Surprised about the gut brain connection. I would agree. It's really, really interesting how much those are connected. Balance my plate and don't eat McFlurries in the afternoon. Nice. Food and mood are related, 100%. Those are some fantastic takeaways. So I also want to leave you with some of the additional support that we can offer at CrossFit Good Fortune. And this is going to be in the form of our nutrition coaching program. In fact, we've had some good success with other folks. Example here is Lace. She was a nutrition client with us for about 12 months. You can see there that she lost 3% body fat, lost 15 pounds. But I'd say almost equally, or probably more important, she gained strength, confidence, and she did a lot of this while she was traveling. Normally, a time when your nutrition and your health kind of take a dive. But with the nutrition coaching, she was able to keep up on her habits and kept with this loss and this strength increase across her habits, her travels as well. So I gave you, yeah, nice. So I gave you a lot of information. I boiled it down to two places to start, on two places you can start. But I also want to tell you what you need to do. What you need to do is take out your phone, scan this QR code, and sign up for our Habit Kickstarter. Because we believe that this nutrition information and this information about health is super important, and we want to make sure that everyone has it. But to be perfectly honest, knowing this is not the hard part. The hard
Hmm.
part is taking that first step and actually building the habits that you can stay consistent with. And the best way to get started on this is this habit kickstart. This is going to be a 28-day program where you're going to have individual meetings with your coach. You're going to have group accountability and a place to track your habits, as well as challenges and private prizes. But the biggest thing here is it's going to get you started with these habits. And that's the hard part. And then you can continue that, roll into ongoing nutrition coaching if you like. But that's the way you're actually going to get these changes. So, of all these things I gave you, one of the most important things is scan that QR code. And that is going to be the best way to get started with all this stuff.